Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Hope everything is fine with you and your families. Today I am going to deliver my second lecture about age-related macular degenerations. We have already discussed dry type of age-related macular degeneration in our previous lecture. Today I am going to discuss about wet type of age-related macular degeneration. Wet age-related macular degeneration is much less common than dry type, but it is associated with more rapid uh, progression of advanced visual loss or sight loss. There are four clinical entities which are associated with wet age-related macular degeneration. The first one is pigment epithelium detachment, and the second one is choroidal neovascularization. Uh, these are very much characteristic clinical entities associated with wet type of age-related macular degenerations. The next two, these polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy and retinal angiomatous proliferations, these are actually variants of age-related macular degenerations. They are not associated with, the characteristics drusen's. So I will not discuss these two in my lecture here. I will basically discuss these two entities, the pigment epithelium detachment and choroidal neovascularization. The choroidal neovascularization in retinal pigment epithelium detachment, there is actually loss of physiological forces that maintain adherence between the retina and Bruch's membrane. This PED or pigment epithelium detachment is usually associated with choroidal neovascularization or with CSCR, central serous chorioretinopathy. The basic problem is reduction of hydraulic conductivity of Bruch's membrane. This means because of changes in the Bruch's membrane, thickening in the Bruch's membrane, the fluid movement is impeded from the pigment epithelium towards the choroid. Okay? This is the basic problem. So there is reduction of hydraulic conductivity of Bruch's membrane that leads to the fluid collection under the pigment epithelium. This is actually a diagram, photograph showing circumscribed area PED. This is picture of fundus fluorescent angiography. This is ICG and this is OCT. We will discuss this one later on. PED can be of four types. It can be serous. There is fluid under the pigment epithelial surface, under the retinal pigment epithelium. It can be fibrovascular. This fibrovascular is actually an occult type of choroidal neovascular membrane. The PED is associated with occult type of fibrovascular choroidal neovascular membrane. Occult choroidal neovascular membrane actually is a membrane in which we cannot define the boundaries of the membrane. So that is the reason this is known as occult. And drusenoid, there is accumulation of soft and large drusens and that left the RPE, and this is usually multiple, not single. So it can be drusenoid also, and it can be hemorrhagic also. Like here, this is hemorrhagic PED, and this is usually associated with choroidal neovascular membranes or with PCV, polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy. What is the presentation? What are the symptoms of the patients? Patient will come to you in the OPD or in the emergency ER with blurred vision and metamorphopsia. Okay, and on examination, on fundus examination, actually the clinical anterior segment examination is within normal limits, intraocular pressure is within normal limits, and on fundus examination you see there is dome-shaped elevation with sharply delineated margin. See this one? This is a dome-shaped elevation involving macula with sharply delineated margins, and if this elevation is associated with blood or lipids, it means there is choroidal neovascular membranes. The basic cause is choroidal neovascular membrane. We need to do certain investigations to confirm our diagnosis, that is optical coherence tomography, fundus fluorescent angiography, and indocyanine green angiography. The best the investigation to diagnose a case of CNV is ICGA, but in cases of PED, pigment epithelium detachment, we can do OCT like here. See this one, this hyperreflective layer is retinal pigment epithelium, and it is separated from the Bruch's membrane, and this area is fluid. This black area is the fluid behind below the pigment epithelium. This is fundus fluorescent angiography, and this is area of increasing hyperfluorescence. This area remains the same, but the hyperfluorescence increases in intensity. So this is diagnostic. This is because of the pooling of the dye under a circumscribed area of pigment epithelium detachment. So the hyperfluorescence increase in intensity, but the area remains same in cases of PED or pigment epithelium detachment. How can we treat the patients of PED? There are different treatment options. Not all the cases of PED should be treated. In some of the cases we need to observe, especially the cases who are younger than 60 years of age and and the PED is not associated with choroidal neovascular membrane. So we need to observe these patients. Sometimes it settles down spontaneously. The other cases in which it is associated with choroidal neovascular membrane, we have to give anti-VEGF, anti-vascular endothelial growth factors. Like in this patient, so see this one, this is PED, pigment epithelium detachment. This hyperreflective layer, this red is pigment epithelium. So it is separated from the Bruch's membrane, and this is fluid. And see this fluid is, there is a gradual resorption of fluid with repeated anti-VEGF injection, intravitreal anti-VEGF injections. But this case was definitely associated with choroidal neovascular membrane. Sometimes you do give the patients repeated injections, but this fluid is not resorbed. So in those cases, the cause of leakage is not the choroidal neovascular membranes. This is PCV, the polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy. So we need to rule out PCV in these cases, and if PCV is there and fluid is not being absorbed, so we need to give anti-VEGF injection along with photodynamic therapy. So this will lead to the resolution of this subretinal fluid, sub-RPE fluid, sorry. The second entity is choroidal neovascularizations. Here actually this blood vessel complex emanates from the choriocapillaris and grows towards the sub-RPE space in type 1 choroidal neovascularization, and it penetrates RPE and grow under subretinal space in type 2 choroidal neovascularizations. It is basically caused by compromised retinal pigment epithelium function and Bruch's membrane function. So this is the first cause, and second is actually there is mismatch between the promotion and inhibition of blood vessels growth by VEGF, which causes the promotion of growth of blood vessels or leakage of blood vessels, and the PED, pigment epithelium derived factor, and complement factor H. These two are inhibitory factors. So they inhibit the growth of blood vessels, and this VEGF actually promotes the growth of blood vessels. It interacts with the photoreceptors on the endothelium, and it causes the growth of the blood vessels then, and increases the leakage of the blood vessels. So this is the two main problems that leads to this choroidal neovascularizations. This choroidal neovascularization can be in different conditions. It can be in inflammatory conditions also. It can be in neoplastic situations. But the most common associations are age-related macular degenerations and myopic degenerations. With what is the symptom of the patient? What is the presenting complaint of the patients? Patient will come to you with acute, subtle, painless loss of visual acuity, and there is metamorphopsia, and it may be associated with positive scotoma if there is hemorrhage. Positive scotoma means there is something obstructing the visual acuity. This is different from the negative scotoma, in which the patient say that there is something missing. And usually the patient has got normal fundus examination, and intraocular pressure is within normal limits. Anterior segment examination is within normal limits. Intraocular pressure is within normal limits. But on fundus examination, you can see a visible membrane like this, a grayish green membrane at the level of the macula, and there can be a medium or large size drusen's. The patient can have this lipid deposition, this sort of hard exudates surrounding this membrane. The patient can have this hemorrhage, this dark hemorrhage shows the blood under the pigment epithelium, and this lighter blood shows the blood under the sensory retina. Okay, and if we do not treat this condition, this is the final picture. There is scarring, there is fibrosis underneath the retina. So we can see the blood vessels of the retina, and this white is all fibrosis. So we need to identify this condition and treat this condition. Otherwise, this is the final picture, and this is associated with absolute no visual prognosis. Patient loses vision. What are the different investigations we need to do in cases of choroidal neovascular membranes? These are fundus fluorescein angiography, optical coherence tomography, and indocyanine green angiography. The choice is this one, but actually this is not available ICG, because this we do with infrared light. So it can be done in cases of, or it can delineate these membranes very clearly, even if the media is hazy, which we cannot delineate with cases of with fluorescein angiography. If the medium is hazy, we cannot delineate these membranes, but with ICG we can delineate these membranes, which we cannot actually highlight with fundus fluorescein angiography. In fundus fluorescein angiography, we actually see these. This is the finding. In fundus fluorescein angiography, we see early phases of angiogram, this lacy pattern of choroidal phase, actually lacy pattern of hyperfluorescence that increase in intensity in the late phases, and there is late leakage. So there is increasing hyperfluorescence with late leakage. So this is diagnostic for choroidal neovascular membrane. In OCT, this is the OCT picture. This is also OCT picture. In OCT picture, there is thickening of the RPE choriocapillaris complex, and there is fragmentation of the RPE. These are two characteristic features which we see on OCT in cases of choroidal neovascular membranes, and this leads to the retinal edema. So this is active choroidal neovascular membrane, and we need to treat this one. Here also you see this is edema, and this is CNV. This second doom is, of CNV. How can we treat this CNV? The treatment of choice is anti-VEGF, anti-vascular endothelial growth factor. We have already discussed the role of VEGF, that it interacts with the receptors at the endothelial cells. So we have to block this wedge of interaction with the receptor at endothelial cells. There are different types of anti-VEGF available. These are the different types of anti-VEGF available. You do not need to go into the detail of this one, just memorize the name. Okay. The second option is photodynamic therapy. Photodynamic therapy we can do in cases of pure choroidal neovascular membranes, or it is more effective in cases of membrane associated with polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy or retinal angiomatosis. So if the patient is not improving, so the probably the diagnosis is PCV, then we need to do PTD, photodynamic therapy, along with anti-VEGF injection. We can go for argon and diode laser photocoagulation also if this choroidal neovascular membrane is extra foveal, away from the fovea. This is very important topic associated with age-related macular degeneration, that is retinal pigment epithelial tear, which is sometimes underdiagnosed and inappropriately managed. People still think that the patient is having PED and they keep on giving the injections, and that leads to the worsening of the visual acuity. So if the patient who is having PED comes to you with sudden fall in visual acuity, we see in PED the patient is having metamorphopsia or blurring of the visual acuity, but if the patient comes back to you with sudden fall of the visual acuity, and on fundus examination, again the anterior segment examination can be normal, you see this crescent shape pale area. This was the initial picture of the fundus, and now the patient comes to you with this picture. So here actually this is the retinal pigment epithelium tear. Pigment epithelium is folded here, this relatively dark area, and this yellowish area is a denuded area. It's a devoid of now retinal pigment epithelium. So we need to investigate this patient to confirm the diagnosis. This tear actually occur at the junction of attached and detached retinal pigment epithelium. It can be spontaneous, not necessarily it is associated with the management. It can be in cases of long-standing PED also. The other important causative factors are laser, unnecessarily laser, or inadvertent or unnecessary intravitreal injections given repeatedly. Other risk factors, as I told you earlier, the older patients, the long durations, and the PED is a large one, and if you see wrinkles onto the surface of the retinal pigment epithelium. The mechanism is actually the two opposing forces that can cause this PED tear is the shrinking neovascular membrane, choroidal neovascular membrane, and the forces that are there between, that means the junction or adherence between the RPE and the Bruch's membrane. This is the investigations. We have to do OCT and we have to do the fundus fluorescent angiography. See, this one is the OCT. This was the dome-shaped elevation of typical retinal pigment epithelium detachment with this fluid, and when the patient developed PED tear, there is tenting of this. The shape is changed now. There is tenting of the RPE, and we can see the tear also, and we can see this hyperreflectivity, increase in the hyperreflectivity of the pigment epithelium, because here the pigment epithelium is folded. And this is the fundus fluorescent angiography picture. Here again you see this one, we can see a hyperfluorescence area, choroidal hyperfluorescence, because here there is no more pigment epithelium. Pigment epithelium is folded here. Okay, so this area is hypofluorescent because of the folding of the pigment epithelium, and this area is hyperfluorescent because we can see choroidal fluorescence here, increased choroidal fluorescence. This is blocked fluorescence because of the blood. If you see the clinical picture of this patient, This is because there is a blood, so this is blood fluorescence. The prognosis is very poor in these cases if unluckily this tear is subfoveal. If it's not subfoveal, the patient may maintain the visual acuity, but if it's subfoveal, the visual prognosis is very poor. Thank you so much.